Hello and welcome back. If anyone can hear me, please reply by chat. Okay, thank you very much. I received an email, a few requests to go through how to create a company. To create a company is very simple. You just have to follow what's called easy step interview. When you don't have any company open, you will see a screen very similar to the screen you see right now. The first time Quickbooks is installed, the screen will be slightly different. You can also start your own company from the File menu, first option called New Company. Or you can click on the New Company button, Create New Company, or one of the three buttons on this screen. When you click on Create New Company, you have two options. Option number one is to go through the full interview, called Start Interview. Second option is to skip interview and just enter the basics. This is recommended for QuickBooks experts, accountants, or if you know already how to create a company. QuickBooks say it takes about 30 minutes, depending on the question and answers. Let's click on Start Interview. Here is where you enter the company information. The top part is important, as it has an asterisk key, and all the way on the bottom it says Required Field. Anything else is optional. You can always enter or change this information later when you're already set up QuickBooks. I'm going to call the name, call it Test Company. When you hit the Tab button after you're done typing the company name, the legal name will copy automatically. If you want, you can override it by entering a new name. The tax ID number, you only need a tax ID number if you want to run payroll or you want to run 1099 forms from QuickBooks. Then you would need to enter the tax ID number. The street address, which is your company's address, whatever is entered on here will come up on all the forms. And of course, you can change it, you can remove it, you can add it later also. Okay, let's say if I don't add it now, and we'll see later how we can add it. This is a phone number, fax number, email, and website. We're done, click Next. Here you decide what type of company. In other words, what industry are you setting up your company? You have several types. They're all falling into the same two categories, products or services. So let's set up a type that's called for a retail shop or online commerce. And this is specifically for retail stores or companies selling on Amazon or eBay. Click Next. What type of organization is it? Is it a sole proprietor, a partnership, a LLC, a regular corporation, an S corporation? Let's set up that we are a corporation, a regular corporation. Click Next. When does the fiscal year start? Most companies start in January, or you can set your own fiscal year. Most of the time you want to verify with the accountant to make sure it's correct. Click Next. You want to enter administrator passwords. You have to make sure that you have it written down somewhere because it's quite difficult to reset an administrator password. An administrator has the right to reset another user's password. But to reset an administrator password is a little complicated, so make sure you remember the password. Or, since this is optional, you can leave it blank. Click Next. Now it's ready to save your file. Basically, it's very similar to Word and Excel. It's going to save a copy of the database onto your either local computer or on a network drive. Click Next, and here's where you decide where you want Quickbooks to save your file. Your file name is going to be, by default, the same name as you called your company name. In our example, called Test Company. In what folder is it being saved? QuickBooks creates a folder called Intuit. In Intuit, there's a folder called QuickBooks. In QuickBooks, there's a folder called Company Files. That's the place where QuickBooks saves the company file, in case you ever look for it. This Intuit folder is created in what's called public documents. If you need to save it onto a network or a server, then you would need to click on the top line where it says Save In and select your network. Click Save. Now it's saving your company file. Takes a few seconds. And then a window will show you're ready to start setting up your company. Now you're going to customize your company according to your needs. It starts with a few questions, and based on the answers, this is how QuickBooks will customize your company. First question is, what do you sell? Services, products, or both? Now, if you sell only services, I would select only services. If you select products, most of the time you'll sell services as well. Might as well select both services and products. Click Next. How do you want to enter your sales? Sales is, as we discussed, either invoices or sales receipts. The question here is, are you planning to enter individual sales or just summary, total sales, either daily or weekly? The first option is to enter every customer. Whenever you sell something, you will enter an invoice for individual person. The second option is if you want just the totals. A lot of companies, especially those who sell on Amazon or eBay, they won't enter each and every customer in their QuickBooks file. They will have a customer, let's call it Amazon, and they will summarize by daily or weekly or bi-weekly, whichever order the company wants. And they will say, okay, we sold all these items in this time frame. And this is the second option. Third option is to use a different program called Quickbooks Point of Sale. And this is designed for storefronts. And you would need to buy the program called Point of Sale. Let's select the first option. I'm going to report each sale individually. Click Next. Do you charge sales tax? It's default to yes, recommended for your business, since this is a retail store. If the case is no, you don't charge, especially if you sell online and you don't have to charge sales tax, select no. If you select no, you won't have the option of charging sales tax. You will have to go in, and we will explain later how to change any of these setup, any of these features. You can always change around from yes to no or no to yes. Click Next. Do you want to create estimates in QuickBooks? Well, if you're a retail store, most of the time if you're walking in a grocery, you won't fill out an estimate. But you do want to have the option. At least they should give you the ability. Click Next. Customer tracking orders in QuickBooks. Do you want to use what's called sales orders? The answer is yes. Although most of the time in a retail shop, you won't have sales orders unless there is work that needs to be done. It's not fulfilled yet, and basically you want to see what's reserved for a customer but not shipped yet. An invoice is the final step of a sale. So if you have a confirmed order, customer walks into the store and orders something, it's not ready to be shipped, you will use what's called a sales order. And then when it's ready to ship, you will convert the sales order into an invoice. So you do want to have the option of a sales order. Click Next. Do you use statements? Most of the time, retail stores and online commerce don't have what's called receivables. They will not use monthly statements as a reminder. And therefore, it's recommended for your business not to use statements. But if you have a local store and you have people coming in and they buy on account, then you do want to have the option to remind them about their balances, especially if you use invoices. Click Next. Using progress invoicing. This is if basically you charge in progress, you bill your invoice from a sales order, a few items, or quantity from an item. Let's say a person orders 10 pieces. You only ship 5. And then you should have the other 5 is coming afterwards. Are you using progress invoices? Most of the time you will have, especially in a retail store, if you see it, you sell it, otherwise you don't sell it. But we will set to yes and click Next. Manage bills you owe. Now, to understand if we want to use bills or not, depending if you run your company on an accrual basis or on a cash basis. If you want QuickBooks to keep track of your expenses when the bill arrives, even though it's not paid yet, then you would want to have the feature of bill. In other words, you keep track of your expenses on an accrual basis when they occur. Some companies will only enter checks as payments, not bills when they arrive. I would recommend every company to use the bill feature and then pay it when the due date comes. Click Next. Do you want to track inventory? Some companies, even though they're a retail store, they don't want QuickBooks to track inventory. Especially if they buy and sell only when they have an order. So they have a bill and they ship it out right away. But if you do have something in stock, you do want to be able to track inventory. That's why there is no recommendation. Every company is different. We do want to keep track of inventory, so we'll set to yes. Are you tracking time? Time is something you want for job costing, or you want to link the time of your employees spent by a job to payroll. It's done mainly either to track payroll, how many hours it took, how many hours they worked, and it's mainly like a timesheet, or they want to be able to bill customers based on a project, how long it took, how much time they spent. So we will set yes. It's recommended for your business as no because this is a retail store and it's not a construction company. Click Next. Do you have employees? Do you want to keep track of employees? Even though if you want to keep track, to be able to run 1099 forms, you would need to activate payroll. For 1099 purposes only, you don't need the full service of payroll, but at least you will activate the employee part. Click Next. Using accounting QuickBooks, and this will be the next step that you will create a set of chart of accounts. But first of all, you need to decide how far back are you planning to enter historical information. Now, if this is a brand new company, you will select the second option. You will say, as of today. If this is an existing company, just setting up QuickBooks for this company, all depends how far do you want, how much information do you want to enter as far as historical information. You want to start from this fiscal year, or you want to start from any date, any beginning date. Click Next. Here is the default recommended chart of accounts. Those who have check marks will be added onto the chart of accounts. Those who don't have check marks will not be added to the chart of accounts. Now you do have the option to check them all manually. If you want only what's recommended, click on Restore to Recommendation. It will eliminate whatever is not recommended by QuickBooks. But you can always add them later. You can always remove it from the chart of accounts. So if you want, you can click on each and every one, or click on the first one, hold down your mouse, and drag it down. This will activate them all. Once you're done, you click Next. Now you're ready to set up mainly the 4 lists. And this is basically the 4 lists that are required and the most important list to start working. The first list is from the chart of accounts to add the other type of accounts that were not added during the interview. The interview is basically done. You just need to add the other type of accounts that's customized to every company, and the items, which is the products and services you sell, you buy and sell, and the people, which is customers, the vendors, the employees, and the other. If you want, you can add it from here, or click on the bottom on the right side, start working, and now you will get the home screen. This is one more chance to go back to the previous screen when you click on Go to Setup, or you close it by Xing out. And this is your brand new company you just opened up. Now, once the company is all set, you go to the chart of accounts, which is the first step, and you start adding your personalized accounts. First step is to open your bank account. When you click on the chart of accounts, how do you get the chart of accounts? You click on the home page. How do you get to the home page? Most of the time when you open your company, it will show up as the first startup screen. On the top right side where the company feature is, there is a button called Chart of Accounts. Also, you can find it on the list menu, Chart of Accounts. And here, in this one we went through already, you click on Accounts, select New. What type of account do you want to add? Click Bank. And then click Continue. Type in the bank account, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it Chase Checking. Usually it's not a sub-account of. You want to enter a description, a bank account number, a routing number, just for your record. Now, is this an existing account already, or you just opened it yesterday? Let's assume we just opened it. I can click on Save a New to open a new account, or Save and Close when we're done. There's also an option to select from examples. Based on the type, QuickBooks will give you a few examples. Now, they won't give you a checking account or a savings account because they don't know what type of account do you want. A retail store will have what's called a cash and drawer. This is also used for companies who use the program called QuickBooks Point of Sale. And this is a special program that works together with QuickBooks. As previously mentioned, it's designed special for storefronts. Then you could click on the account you want to add, you click OK, and it will be added as part of your account. If you want to open a new account, select which account you want to open now. And you want to make sure you have all your accounts, all your asset accounts, all your liability accounts, all your equity accounts, your type of income, and other type of expense accounts that were not added, that were not set up, and that were not added during the interview. If you're done, click Cancel or Save and Close. Now you have your checking account. The next step is going to be to open your items, to select your items and services. Now, this item, you see all these 5 items, is added by QuickBooks automatically. If you want, you can eliminate them all, or you can leave them. There is 2 options to eliminate them. One is to delete or to deactivate, make it inactive. Delete, either right-click, delete item. Are you sure you want to delete this item? You click OK and it's gone. Or right-click, make them inactive. Now it's hidden, it's invisible. If you want to bring it back, click on Include Inactive. Just if you want to see it. If you want to make it active, make item active again. QuickBooks adds 2 general items. One is called consignment item. Consignment is, not to go into details, sometimes you will sell an item, but the customer tells you, I don't have money to pay. So they will consign an item without terms. And then they have a general non-inventory part item, which is just in general. Most of the time a company will specify what type of items, how they call it, just to be able to select, I'm selling this item, I'm selling another item. So based on your industry, based on your type of company, you will set up your list of items. Sometimes, especially if you don't want to keep track of inventory, you will have what's called a general item. And QuickBooks adds the second item as a non-inventory general item. And this is anything that you don't want to specify exactly. Sometimes you will have little items. You don't want to add each item separate. And this is just for the name. You could also change the name if you want to call it different. Simply double click. This is telling you that you could add or change multiple lists. We'll see in a minute how we do that. If you don't want this message to pop up again, click on Do Not Display this message in the future on the far left side and the bottom, and then click OK. And here you have the option to override this name and call it whatever you want. But most of the time, you will add your own customized list of items. How to add an item, you click on the Item button on the bottom left side, and then click New. For those who like keyboard shortcuts, Control-N for New will do it. Set what type of item it is. If it's a non-physical product, select Service. If it's a physical product, then decide if you want to keep track of inventory parts, then set as inventory parts. Otherwise, set as non-inventory parts. As discussed previously in the first session, very important to decide if you're buying and selling the exact same product, then you might want to set it up as an inventory part. Otherwise, do not set it up as an inventory part. The reason being is, number one, your numbers, the amount, the quantity will not match. And number two, you might mess up the accounting part. Rather, keep it as non-inventory part. Inventory part has one big advantage, that you can see on a particular item how much money did it cost you, how much money was the revenue part, the income part, and what was the difference, the margin. There is a report called Inventory Evaluation Summary. You can see how much it cost you when you have it in stock and how much your recommended selling price based on, let's say I select my inventory part, what amount did you enter on the sales price? If you enter a cost and you enter a sales price, QuickBooks will be able to tell you how much money you should have you should have made on this product based on the information that you enter. And this is only if the item is set as inventory part. But once again, if you're not buying and selling the exact same product, this feature will not work. The same is when you sell an item. It's no longer in inventory, it's no longer in stock. You will be able to run a report called sales by item, either summary or details, and it will tell you exactly what the cost, in other words, the average cost, and what is the selling price and the difference. Again, this is only going to work for inventory parts. Non-inventory parts will not work. But if this is an item that you don't buy and sell the exact same item, then it's defeating the purpose. You set up your item. Now it's going to show on this list. And then you continue with your vendors and customers. To set up vendors, you click on vendors. And then you start with a new vendor on here. You fill in all the blanks. Again, as we mentioned previously, you start with either company name or first and last name. Then you will see it on your vendor list. All these were already discussed, so you could see it and try it on your own. You click on customers, and you start adding and setting up your customers. First, you want to start with a new customer. Then, once the customer is set up, if you want to add a job, you highlight the customer, and then you click New Customer and add a job. Let's see, for example, I want to set up a company as my customer. I hit the tab button. Now the same name will copy on the top and it will copy on the bottom where it says address bill to. I click on the end of the name, either with the down arrow or hit enter. And then you type in the address. Now, if you proceed from here, you didn't fill in exactly the city, state, and zip. If you hit the tab button, this screen will pop up. The reason being is because there's a check mark by default. Show this window again when address is incomplete or unclear. This is like a little reminder saying, hey, you're missing some information. So you realize, okay, I need to enter my zip code. You can enter the country here, and then a little note next to the address. You click OK. Now, it looks, if you don't want it to show you, don't want it to pop up, then remove the check mark. You enter the contact. Now, if you enter any name by first and last name, the same name will copy over onto the contact. Now the same name copies over onto the contact. You enter a phone number. Fax number. And you have alternate contact, email, and CC. I want to add a ship to. This is going to be a store number. So let's say store number or without store number. And the address is Now I have my store number. Now, after that, I noticed that, oh wait, I didn't fill in, it's supposed to be with the company name. I can still edit it. I click on edit. I click on where before the address, hit enter. This way it moves down a line, and then you add whatever the company name is. Because you want to make sure on your packing slip, it shows the company name as well as the ship to. Here you can add some more. If you want to delete whatever the ship to address is, you click on delete, and now it's asking you sure you want to delete it? It's gone forever. The next tab is additional info. You want to make sure you have your types on it. Now, one of the questions was, I want to see on my customer list, I want to be able to see all the types. First of all, set your own type or select from the recommended one. So I'm going to set up a new type, call it residence. You can mark it as a subtype of another one, or leave it as a standalone. What's their terms? Let's say it's standard 30 days. I want to set up my representative. Click on add new, but I don't have any other name. So I would need to add. And this is only a one-time setup. That you need to set up all your sales reps. You click on add new, it's asking you what type is this person? Is it a vendor working on a 1099? Is it an employee? Or just another name? Let's set up that this is a vendor. Now, you're going straight to the vendor screen. Let's say this is a private person. And everything gets copied over, and you have the option to, and we'll see how to set up a vendor in a minute. I also want here, on the second tab, additional info, to set up the type that this is a sales rep. This way I see all my sales rep together. And then, of course, if this person is receiving checks as commission, you want to make sure is eligible for 1099 and they're social. If you want, you can add their address, otherwise leave it blank. You can always change it later. Now what's happening is, it adds the name on here, plus the initials, which is the one you will see on the rep, and then what type of sales rep it is. If you want, you can click on Edit Name, and it brings you back to the same Edit Vendor screen. Click OK. Now you see, and you can use the same rep for any other person. How do you send their forms? Let's say send it by email. Taxable customer or not, let's say it's a taxable customer. Now part of your settings is going to be to set up your local tax. So let's say I'm going to add my sales tax item. I click on Add New, and this is considered a new item. What type of item is it? Most of the time you will not use sales tax group. You will only use sales tax item. Let's call it based on the region, on the area you are. Sales tax name, let's call it New York City. Hit the tab button, the description will be sales tax. If you want, you can add New York State, New York City sales tax. What's the rate? 8.875. Always make sure it has the percent sign, but Quickbooks will add the percent sign automatically. Now, this is important. Who is collecting the money? Who will the checks be written out to? In New York, you have a NYS sales tax agency, I believe. Hit the tab button. It's not on the vendor list. So this is for sure a vendor. If you want a quick add, then it will only save the name. If you want to set up and be able to add the address, and of course you also want to add the account number under the additional info, which is either your account number with them or the tax ID, depending on the state. Once you're done, you click OK. And then this is to set up the vendor called NYS sales tax. Now you save the item, so you click OK again. This customer is assigned to this sales tax code. Retail number is only if this is a non-taxable customer. Then the reason is because they're a reseller, then you would set tax code to none, resale number to whatever the number is. Let's put it back to tax. Price level we already discussed. This is after we set up all our items, we could set that every customer has a different price code per item. Payment info. We have all this information already. And then, if you want, you can add your job info. We already went through this. Once you're done, you click OK. Now you have your customer on a customer list. All the information is on here, whatever the context information is. And you don't have any transactions. That's why it doesn't show on the bottom of the screen on the right side, but eventually it will show. You want to edit something, you want to change, either double click on the name from the list or highlight it and then click Edit Customer. And here you have the option to change whatever needs to be changed. Once you're done, you click OK. How do I add? I want this customer type, where it shows here, I want it to show next to the name on the list. Like anything else, you will right-click any place in this area here. You have a bunch of options here. One of the options is to customize column. On the left side is the chosen columns. You have the option to attach documents. Up to a certain amount in file size is free from Quickbooks. After that, you have to have a subscription. How to set it up, simply follow the procedure. You need a login, a username and a password, and you will attach your documents. It's basically attached, and it's uploaded to Quickbooks. You might find it beneficial if you want certain contracts or important documents, you want it to be saved off-site. For now, we're not going to use it, so I'm going to remove the attached column from the chosen columns. So you highlight it, either you double-click, or you highlight it and then click Remove. Now once you click OK, it will no longer show on the list. Now we do want to add the customer type. I scroll down and all these on the left side is available to show on the list. Choose whichever column you want. Let's say in our scenario I want to add the customer type. Either double click or click Add. Now in which section, which part you want it to see? Do you want it to show? Do you want it to show between name and balance total or after balance total? Right now, by default, it's the last, on the left side. If you want customer type to show between the name and the balance total, click on the back of the customer type and click on Move Up. Now click OK, and you'll have the name the customer type, which is residential, and then followed by the total, the balance total. If you want to expand this area, the list, you point on the borderline between the list and the information until it shows an icon. The mouse becomes like this display. Click with the left mouse, hold it, and drag it to the right. And then leave it. The same is if you want to redesign your display. When you click on the top of one of these columns, this way it will sort the list. If you click on name, it will sort by name. If you click on customer type, it will sort by customer type. And then if you click on balance total, it will sort according to the balance. If you click on balance total, you have the option greater to larger, or, smaller to larger, or larger to smaller. Click on one part, or click on the other part, and you'll see on what type it's sorted by. If you want to resort the list back to default, click on this little diamond on the left side to name. You're looking for a customer, you have a whole list of customers. You're looking for a customer. Number one, you want to make sure the view, which is by default set to active customers. You want your view to show all your customers. Then you will see a little X mark, the X. If any customer has an X next to it, like this one, that means this customer is inactive. If you set the view, we only have one customer, and this customer is inactive. If I change my view back to active customers, I don't have any customers. And this is the message. We don't have any customers. Click OK. I want my customers back. Click All Customers. Then if you want to reactivate this customer, click again on the X. Now this customer is active again. I'm looking for a particular customer. You can custom filter, and then you will get the screen. Type in whatever name you want. Now, where should Quickbooks look in? By default, it's set to all common fields. That means they will search by address, name, phone number, and you can type in anything you want here. Or you can set, just to make the filter, especially if you have a lot of customers, it will take quite a while to search. You can set, it should only look in the name field, because I'm looking for a name, or in the address, phone number, or whatever you want on here. And then you type in whatever you want. Once you click go, it will show up, it will narrow the list to the whatever the search was. Every transaction in this company will show up on transactions on the next tab. This will be according to whatever you set. You can have, you want to see only all the estimates from all the customers. You want to see all the sales orders, all the invoices, and so on. Then you can set, I want to see all the invoices, but from which date. I want to see this week, today, and anything else, or you want to see all the invoices. Also invoices, you can set, I only want to see the open invoices, or I only want to see the overdue invoices. And this is basically filters. Now sometimes if you filter it to something, you have to remember to remove it back to the original. Otherwise, when you click on transactions, it won't show. You can also set all these filters on the individual customers. But here you will only see the individual customers you select. On the second tab, you will see everything. And all the transactions that belong to whichever customer it is. On the first column, you will see the customer. You can also customize the columns to show more columns than you see here. You click on Customize Columns, and on the left side, you have more options to add to the chosen columns that are shown already. This is mainly what you could do with customers. There are features that you could write letters, prepare letters for this particular customer or any other customer. And there are a few types of letters. There are built-in letters, and then you could also customize your letter. And this is basically explained on here, and more in detail is explained in the intermediate class. You can also import a list, a customer list from Excel. Sometimes if you have a list, you have a major change that you want to update for all your customers. For example, you want a few customers to update the customer type. Or you want to add to all your customers the city, the state, the zip. And they're mainly the same. You could click on New Customer and Job and select Add Multiple Customers Job. This will now show very similar to Excel. Move over to what field you want to add or edit. Let's say you want to add this part here. And this is telling you that you can copy down. We'll see in a minute. You can override. You can change it on here. And it's a little easier to change information here because you have it on bulk rather than double-clicking on each and every customer and update the address. If you want this field, because right now you can't see who it belongs to. If you want this field to show next to the name all the way on the left side, then you would click Customize Column on the top right side. On the left side, you have available columns that doesn't show here. On the right side is all the columns that are already showing. If you want to, let's say you want to bring the customer type right next to the name or right next to the company name, first find the customer type if it's not already showing. First add it, and then move it up all the way, either next to the name or next to the company name. You're done, click OK. Now you could, with one click of a button, you could copy the customer type from one customer to a set of more customers. In other words, if you have a list of all your customers that are located in New York, you could filter it by finding the word New York. And all these customers you can update. That the city and the state, whatever you want. And then you can copy. You only have to type in. If you want to copy everything from the top, you only have to type it in the first one, and then you right-click and say Copy Down. But of course, other customers need to be set up before. When you're done, click Save Changes. And it will update your customer card accordingly. You want to save keep the changes? Not yet. And of course, if you add something or change anything, you want to keep the changes. This is just in a nutshell how to, based on the questions. Hope this answers the question. It's more discussed in the intermediate class. The same thing applies if you want to set up a vendor. You want to make sure you have your vendor set up. Once everything is set up on the list, then you're ready to start working. One of the questions in email was, all their transactions from prior were entered only when the time was to pay the bills or the customers paid. Now, let's not go into accounting-wise. There are two ways how to run certain reports. You want to see, for example, if you're a non-profit organization, you have pledges, and then you have the receipts that the donors pay. Instead of using either a sales receipt to enter that they donate and paid, you can use invoices as pledges, and then when the time comes, they send in their donations, use the receipt payment. So you want to see both sides of a report. You want to see anything that was donated and anything that was paid, receipt. You can run a report, and one of the reports is the profit and loss. You click on the report, company financial, profit and loss standard, and of course this is an empty company, it doesn't have any information, but usually it's set to accrual basis. If you want, you can change your type of report by clicking on the Modify Report button. I want to see anything that was received, anything that was paid. If it's not paid, then it won't show. So it will only show paid invoices, and it will also show everything that was entered on sales receipts. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind, it will not show received payments that were not applied to any invoice. And this is very important. If you have a received payment, let's see how it looks like. This is basically, they want to go through, this is only the first time, they want you to go through an interview of payments. And this is basically what you see on the left side. You want to add credit cards, processing, e-checks, and everything else. I say I don't want to display this message again. I don't want to go through this interview right now. And I don't want to see the left side, the left bar. So I click on Close Toolbar. It's telling you if you want to bring it back, you can click on the Edit menu on the top, select the last option, which is Preference, and then click on Sales and Customers, and select that you do want to see the Payment Toolbar. This is only if you miss it, you don't want to see it. I'm going to select that this customer paid me on account. Of course, there is no balance. I don't have anything. So I'm just going to type in that they sent money on account. How did they pay? By check. Check number was 159 and saving close. It was today's date, let's say. It's a warning you saying that they paid money just like that without any balances, with no reason. You click OK. Now when you go into your customer center, you will see that this customer has a credit balance of $100 because there was a payment with no charge. If you go into your report, company financial, profit and loss standard, it won't show on accrual basis. It will also not show if you set your reports, like modify reports, display. You set the report basis to cash, you click OK, it will not show. Reason being, even though it was cash receipt, but it was not applied to anything. It won't show on your profit and loss. When you try to escape the first time, it will ask you, do you want, because we customize it, we modify a report, do you want to memorize the report? If you find a report very helpful for you, especially if you modify it, you do want to memorize it. You can also click on Memorize Reports to memorize your reports. Right now, I don't want to memorize it, so I click No. Now, and this is done if a customer has to send a deposit before the time of the sale. Then sometimes, after a while, you're going to charge your customer for whatever product or services. So I click on New Transaction, I click on Invoices. The same I can find on the home screen, Create Invoice. Here you have to type in which customer you want to use. If you use the invoices from the customer center, if you highlight which customer you want to use, you click on New Transactions, Invoices, and then it will show up automatically. So you can use this if you want to invoice a particular customer. Let's say the date, the invoice, everything else, by default it comes up as the ship to. If you want it to be shipped to the same address, you would need to add it as a ship to. Otherwise, you can delete it. If you delete the number, the ship to store number from the top, this will become blank. PO number, you will enter the purchase order number from your customer. The terms comes up automatically. The sales rep comes up based on whatever you entered on the customer center. What date was it shipped? You could say that it was shipped today, yesterday, last week, whenever you want. How was it shipped? Shipped by. One of these, you can add your own, that it was shipped by your truck. FOB, who's paying for the shipping, freight on board. How many pieces? Let's say I'm going to charge for 5 pieces. I don't have any items. It's either you go back to your item list, and this is usually what you're going to do when you open the company originally. You're going to set up all your items, especially if you have a list of your items in Excel. You could import it from Excel into Quickbooks. Otherwise, you would set it up while you're creating an invoice. Click on Add New, and then what do you want to set it up? Let's say I want to create a service. And you would call it installation. Not a sub-item of anything. Unit of measure, we're not keeping that. FOB stands for freight on board, mainly used to decide, to advise the customer who is paying for the shipping. If it's an out-of-state or overseas order, you want to make sure, since the shipping to the customer will cost a lot of money, do you want to see, so let's say you're located in New York State. The freight, the product is only mainly for product. The product is coming from overseas, let's say from China. If FOB says China, that means the customer has to pay to bring the product from China to wherever they are located. If FOB says New York, that means the vendor, which is your company, is going to pay for the product to arrive here. This is what FOB stands for. Description, let's say I can copy whatever it says on the item and then add whatever I want. I highlight the item, either right-click or use Control-C. Then I click on Description, highlight Paste, or Control-V. Then I add Installation Charge. What's the rate? I usually charge $80 per hour. Is it taxable? Yes, it's taxable. Now, what account am I going to use? This is based on each company separate. Some companies will have one account called Sales. Some companies will have two separate accounts, especially if they sell products and they also provide services. One account, like this company here. One account is called Merchandise Sales for all the products, and one account is called Service Sales for all the services. Since this type of the item is a service, I will map this item to be associated with the service sales on the chart of accounts. Every item has to be associated with an account, regardless of what account it is. To make sure it's set up correctly, always make sure if it's a service that you provide, then for your company, it's an income. Make sure it's associated with an account, any type that has an income on the right side of the account. Once you're done, you click OK. Now we have an installation for $80 a piece. Since quantity of 5, we have an $150 invoice. Based on a tax rate, since this customer is a taxable customer. The item is a taxable item. Now it added the tax. You can print it, email, allow online payment, which I would remove. Then this is telling you if you want to add it back, you can click, go to the same place, edit, preference, company preference, and select it, that it should show. Basically, if you email it or you print it, the customer will see a link that they can go online and pay their bills using a check or credit card. What you do need is a subscription. Buy into it. If this service costs money, yes it does, like anything else. So you basically sign up for a subscription. There's two types of services, like any credit card. You can have no monthly fee, but then the discount fee, whatever they charge, the percentage is a little higher. Or you can have a monthly fee, and then the discount fee, the percentage is a little less. If you need more information on credit cards, I can recommend you very cheap companies. Let me know by email, mayor@fmdbusiness.com. You can add your customer message if you want, and then you're basically done. Click Save and Close. This is the message that you will receive. The customers send you a check of $100, and now you have an invoice for $163.81. Now, the balance of this customer is now only $63.31. Reason being is because they send a check, they send in payment on account for $100. Now, do you want to apply the open credit? Quickbooks doesn't tell you what type of credit it is. Is it a credit that we issued for the customer as a refund and credit, or is it an unapplied payment? If you click yes, you will get the screen, and it won't tell you what type of credit it is. You could see if this is a new version, if you have the newer version, you can see what type of credit they have, basically. If it would be a credit, it would say the transaction type is credit, not payment. But since we know already this is a payment, you want to use the entire credit, the entire payment, or only partial. Sometimes you have a company and the customer has to send in a deposit, but this is for several orders. So you don't want to apply the full deposit to the first invoice. You can overwrite and say amount to use, whatever amount you want to use. QuickBooks is not really designed for percentages. You will have to do the calculation on your own. Once you're done, you click Done. Now, you will see the balance is $63.31. If you click on Open Balance, it will only show the invoice. The original amount of the invoice is $163.81. The open balance is $63.81. How was this invoice paid? You can double-click on this invoice. You see the invoice in full. All the way on the bottom, more to the right side, you will see the total invoice is $163.31. Payment supplied is $100. That's because you apply the actual payment from previously. Balance due is $163.31. Is $63.81. Now, how was this invoice applied? Where do I see it? You click on History or Control H for History. History is on the top of the invoice screen. This will tell you the total of the invoice, how it was paid, $100 out of it was paid, and then $63.81 is still the balance. There is no stamp on this page because there is still a balance. Now when you go into reports, company financial, profit and loss standards, your income is $150. The difference between $163.81 and $150 is the taxes. The taxes is not your income. So it will show you on an accrual basis, it will show you the $150, which was the income on an accrual. Accrual is basically invoices, no matter if it's paid or not. If you change this report to modify reports, and you change the report basis to cash, you click OK, it will only show the paid portion of the invoice. Now, you might ask, wait a minute, they paid $100, not $91.85. Well, QuickBooks works on a percentage basis. Out of the $100, how much percent is the tax portion? And they will apply part of the payment also to the tax. This way, most cases, by law, you're only required to send in the sales tax if it's paid. So this is, even though most companies work on an accrual basis, their income is based on invoices, regardless if it's paid or not, and their expenses is based on bills, regardless if it's paid or not. Sales tax is one of the only times, and even though a company works on an accrual basis, sales tax in most cases, and of course you have to verify it with your accountant, because there are certain differences. Sometimes it's different by law. But in most cases, you will only have to send in for sales tax agency only if the sales tax, if the tax was collected. And this way, it will not apply the tax, the payment exclusively to the invoice, which is your part, and it will also not apply exclusively to the sales tax. What QuickBooks does is it divides it based on the percentage. And this is how you can see, I want to see all my income, but only collected income, everything that was paid. If this payment, I have an invoice, and I have a payment, they're not applied, they're not linked together, it won't show on the screen if it's set to cash basis. It will only show the invoices if it's set on accrual basis. Reason being, even though it's paid, but you didn't tell the system how it was paid. It needs to be applied. Get the same message you want to memorize this report. If it's annoying, click on Do Not Display this message and then click No. He won't ask you again. Any questions so far? Now that this customer owes you some more money, you go back to new transactions and you receive the additional payment. On the new version, you can go back to the invoice and click on the receive payment on the top on the invoice. But let's say I'm going to record the payment from the receive payment window. Now, payment method, remember it's from last time. What the date is, you only have to fill in the check number. You don't have to type in the amount in here. When you click to place a check mark next to the invoice, the first time you set up your company, it's going to confirm that you want it to be automatically calculate payment. You click yes, then going forward, it will always calculate the payment based on the check marks. You click Save and Close. Now you can bring back the invoice. First of all, the balance is 0. Now you can bring back the invoice based on the transactions from the customer, and you will see it has a mark paid, and in the newer versions also has a date when it was paid. On the history, on the right side, it will have a list of payments, and it will have a list of invoices, and it will tell you if it's paid or not. It only marks it as paid if the payment is applied. Let's say, for example, if I go back to this payment, which is the one we just did, and I'm going to unapply it, either by removing the check mark on the left side next to the invoice, or by clicking on the unapply payment on the bottom on the right side. The payment is still here, but it's not applied. Now, it doesn't say any more paid, and there's no stamp paid. Even though the open balance for this customer, as you can see on the right side on the history, is 0. When you click on this 0 here, which will bring you up an open balance report, it will have an open invoice and an unapplied payment, which brings you the balance of 0. Now, if you run your profit and loss report on an accrual basis, it will show 150. On a cash basis, it will still show you the same number as last time, 91.85. It will not show you the full payment. Only if you go back to the payment, by double-clicking on it, apply it, either by placing a check mark or auto-apply payment. Save and close. First of all, it doesn't show up anymore on the open balance. It's paid. And now your company financial profit and loss standards report, accrual basis, which you see here, and cash basis is now the same, because everything that was invoiced were paid. The same concept is if you use. Question is, why wouldn't you not want it to auto apply? The answer is, sometimes companies have a policy that they need deposits, security deposits. You do want to show that the customer has a deposit, but you don't want to show that this invoice is paid because you want some of the deposit to be applied to next invoices. And this invoice they still need to pay. Then you will have payments on account, which they don't have, which is not paid yet. And what you will do is at the end, when the project is done, then you will sit down and say, okay, everything is shipped, now we can apply the open balance towards from the deposits. So you have a correct figure of exactly what the customer has a balance, but you also see what invoices is paid and what invoices is not paid. Also, sometimes you can have customers who send you money on account. You have invoices, one invoice for $100, another invoice for $150, and then they send you a check for $50. You don't know for which invoice they want it to be applied. In bookkeeping, it's very good, it's very recommended to make sure you're on the same page with the customer. Otherwise, at the end of the year, the end of any time frame, the customer can call you and say, I don't know, I send you this amount, I applied it to this invoice, you applied it to that invoice, send me a statement, it becomes a whole nightmare, it becomes a whole mess. That's why you always want to make sure, either verify it, confirm it with your customer saying, the payment that I received, you can click on previous, I received the payment from you, I applied it to whatever invoices. Of course, if they specify, I want it to be applied to a certain invoice, then you would do accordingly. Problem starts if they send you money on account and they don't specify exactly to what invoices they want it applied. So some bookkeepers will leave it unapplied, and then after a while they sit down with the customer and straighten out to make sure they're both on the same page. You can print what's called a receipt. You click on print, will it let me print? And you can preview it to see how it's going to look. And you can say, okay, if this payment from this customer, so on the top part here it will say your company, this payment from this customer, and this is basically the information, date received by check, check number, the amount was applied to this invoice. If it's not applied, then this part will be zero, will be blank. And this you could send to your customer as advice to make sure, and this is the only part you can send, showing how the invoices were paid. Before we forget, how do we add, as I noticed, the letterhead from my forms? Let's say I want to print an invoice. Click on print preview. Basically telling you that you could print shipping labels, okay. My company information is missing information. Has my test company, but there's no information on the letterhead. Reason being is part of the interview we didn't enter all this information. You can always add it. You click on company, select company information. Whatever it says in this address block, this will show on the letterhead of the invoices. And this is just to make sure that the information. So if you want your invoices to show a PO box instead of the physical address, you will enter the physical address as part of the legal address, and this will show
the mailing address. And of course, you can add or change any information that are missing or wrong. Since we didn't add anything, do you want to go back and change your legal address? Let's say no. And that's the place where you want to change all the information. The same concept applies when you have a bill. We have a bill. I want to make sure I add my vendors. Now, the question is what type of vendors, and you can also group them by type. If you want to have a list of all your suppliers that supply your merchandise, or a list of all your expense vendors. Some companies don't want to put in bills because they're only putting in bills for vendors that provide merchandise, that supply merchandise. The problem is, especially if the bills are not paid right away, you don't know what's happening, what's the status, what's outstanding, what needs to be paid. Now again, you can run your profit and loss on a cash basis, and you can run your profit and loss on an accrual basis. First, it's recommended you get a bill, first enter it in the system, regardless if it's paid or not. This way, you will know exactly what's outstanding, what needs to be paid. In order to run a cash flow, budget, forecast, QuickBooks needs information. So if you're only going to add it, if you're only going to enter it when you pay it, you might miss some information. And this is a simple reminder to pay your bills. Add your vendor. You start with the company name. And then you enter the address. Let's say it's a PO box. Okay, you have the phone and everything else, and then you click on this additional info. Enter your account number here. What type of vendor is this? Service provider, supplier, whatever you want. You can add your own. This is utilities. What terms do I have to pay it? Not 30 days, and not 15 days. I want to add my own. Click on Add New. I want to add 20 days. I type in 20, net 20, and then you also have to make sure you enter the net due, which is 20 days. Click OK, and then you can set the others. This one is not eligible for 1099. The bill didn't go through, so you don't have to issue 1099s for all vendors. Click on Account Pre-Fill, and this is a good idea to make sure that every time you enter a bill for this vendor, it will always show up as utilities. Some companies will want to itemize what type of utilities. You have gas, you have electric, you have telephone, you have water, you have sewer, you have garbage, and everything else. So you can add it on your chart of accounts originally. On your chart of accounts, you can also add it on here. If you start typing, not going to select utilities. You're going to select electric. If I click someplace else or I hit the tab button, this is the message you will get. Account not found. Do you want to set it up? Click yes. Click setup. What is it? It's an expense. I click on continue. You also have the option to select from examples. And it will give you a list of examples that were not set up during the interview. I don't see any electric on there. This electric is a sub-account of, you have to make sure you check it off. Now you have the option to select what this electric is a sub-account of. And it's a sub-account of utilities. You can type in a description or a note or leave it blank. Then you click Save and Close. You can have at the same vendor up to 3 types of pre-fill accounts. You're done, you click OK. Now you have all the information, most of the information on the bill. All you need to do is enter the date of the bill, the reference number, if it has. Most utility companies don't have an invoice number. So what most companies will do, most bookkeepers will do, they will enter the date as the reference number. Now, the idea of the reference number is to remind you that you should not enter 2 bills, the same bill twice. In order for the system to remind you, this reference number has to be the same, enter the same order. Sometimes you will enter 06/30/11. Sometimes you will enter 063011. For Quickbooks, it's 2 different types. It's 2 different numbers. If you enter it one way, and then you try to enter the same bill the same way, Quickbooks will flag you saying, this number, this reference number is already in the system for this vendor. If you enter it different way, it won't work. It's defeating the purpose. The electric bill is a total of $200. Now the bill is due based on the terms 20 days after the transaction date. If you want, you can add a memo. This will print on the check. This memo will not print on the check, only on the stub. This is general expense. It's not specifically for a customer. So you leave the customer part blank. Then you click Save and Close. If you go into your profit and loss, company financial, profit and loss standards, now you have an income of $150, an expense of $200. Your net profit is negative $50. If you change it to your cash basis, you click OK, you don't have any expenses. Reason being because it's not paid. Of course, when you go into your paid bills, you don't have anything in the account to pay. Why? Because the received payment did not end up in the bank yet. You need to deposit the money first. You click on Record Deposit, and now you will deposit both in the account. Either you select each individual, or you can say, I don't want all of them, I want all, or you can decide which one you want to deposit. When you have different types of payment methods, checks and cash usually go together. Credit cards go separate. They will never be deposited in the bank together with checks and cash. Reason being is it's being wire transferred into the account by the credit card company. So you will never select a payment method check or a payment method cash together with a payment method of credit card. So let's say you're depositing these 2 checks, you click OK. Now you have all the information from the previous screen onto this deposit screen. Where is the money going into? I only have one bank account, and for sure it's going to be deposited in this account. When is it going to be deposited? Let's say today. Okay. Now today is the last day of June. If you do the deposit tomorrow and it was physically deposited today, you might have an issue when it comes to reconcile. So make sure the date is correct. Here you could enter a memo the way you want it to show up on the register or on the reconciliation screen. Sometimes if this is money received by credit card, you can overwrite this and say it's a credit card charge, it's a credit card deposit, and it's going to be easy to identify it from the statement. You're done, click Save and Close. Now you have whatever the amount is in the bank. You want to see your balances, click on the plus next to account balances on the home screen. You have an account payable, you owe for a company $200, and then in your checking account is $163 and change. Now you have some money to pay your bills. You can go into pay bills and say, I can't afford to send $200 to this company. If you pay the $200 in full, your ending balance will be in the minus. You can override the $200 and decide I want to pay only $150. You click someplace else, now the rest will be in your account. Pay selected bills. You only paid $150. You click done. Or if you want, you could print the check. Now you go again to your profit and loss, and you see on accrual basis, income was $150, $200 for expense, and then the net income is negative. On a cash basis, it will be the same because income was $150. You only paid part of the bill, which is $150, and your net income is $0. If you want to see what is this $150, you double click on it, and then it gives you the details. You double click on this, and here you could see the original amount. Because this is a cash basis, you could see the original amount is $200. The paid amount is only $150. You double click on this and you get a copy of the bill. You click on history and you see only $150 was paid and the bill balance is still $50. You try to go in to enter bills again. Sometimes, especially today's time, you get the bills on email. You can get a bill on fax, and also by mail. So if you get it like a week later, you get it by mail, and you simply forgot that you entered the bill already, you type in account Edison, let's say the same date, and you start typing 063011, another $200, and then you want to click Save and Close. This is the message you will get. Another bill already has number, whatever the number is. You want to keep the number. If you know for a fact that it's supposed to be a duplicate bill, it's just a revised bill or whatever the reason is, then you click on Keep Number. Most of the time you will not click on Keep Number. You'll click on Cancel and investigate, make sure it's not. But if you use this method to enter the slashes as the dates, and then you click on Save and Close, it will let you go through. So that's why we need to make sure that the sequence of entering reference numbers should always be the same. Now you can see you have a balance. You have a bill of $200, and then you have a bill again, and you can see what the difference is. You can click on the transactions on this part, on the top, and you can see a list of all your bills. You can sort it by amount just to make sure there is no duplicate transactions. Double click on this if you want it to delete. Either right click, delete bill, or click on edit, delete bill, or Control D. You sure you want to delete this bill? Yes. One of the questions was, how can I get a reminder that I'm supposed to pay a bill? Well, this is not Outlook. This is not based on schedule. Two ways, actually three ways, how to get reminded to pay the bills. Number one, always make sure that the bill has the correct due date. This bill should be accurate. This way, you can go into pay bills and you can see when your bills are due. You see today's date, question, if I have two bills to pay the same day and I write the date for reference, will it clash? Well, the question is if it's the same vendor or it's two different vendors. This problem is only if it's the same reference number for the same vendor. If it's the same reference number for two different vendors, then it's not a problem. This is only designed to remind you that this reference number already exists for this vendor. It's only to remind you to make sure that the vendor usually sends you a bill with a reference number, which is an invoice number. And you want to make sure that you don't enter the same invoice number twice. If it's two different vendors, the system won't tell you anything. Question, can you make head checks? Yes, if you want to post-date a check for future date, let's say sometimes, especially if you go on vacation, you want to prepare your checks, but you don't want to mail it out yet. Or you want to give it to a vendor with a future date. When it comes to the screen to pay bills, make sure the payment date is set to whatever date you want it to show on the check. The left arrow will go back a month. The right arrow will go further, next month. Now we're up to June 30th. So you will click on July and then select, or you want to post-date it more, whatever date you want it to be. If you post-date a check, let's say I want to pay this bill $50, but I want it to be dated on the due date, 7/20. Click on the arrow. I select July, and then you look for the due date. Or, and this is part of the keyboard shortcut that I send out, whoever sent me an email. If I want it back on today's date, I highlight the date, or you don't have to highlight. I hit the letter T for today. If I want it to be post-dated a couple of days, like 2-3 days, on the date, you could press the plus sign, the plus key on the keyboard. Each time you press the plus, it will move the date 1 day ahead. Minus will go back. Each time you press the minus key on the keyboard will go back 1 day. This is how you do post-dated checks. How do you want to pay? By check or credit card? You have to make sure, of course, you have your credit card account set up. You can't use this screen, only this pay bill, only if you have your bank account already set up. Otherwise, you will get a message saying you need to set up the bank account first. And this is obviously the first thing, the first step you would set up when you open a company. So if I can either use the calendar on the right side, or I can simply type in. I type in 0720 for July 20th. Within the same year, you don't have to type in the year. Only if you want to post-date it for 2012, or you want to backdate it to 2010. Then you will have to type in the year as 2010 or 12. Also in Quickbooks, you don't have to type in 2011. You can 11. Once you hit the tab button, it will automatically understand. Same thing if you want it or you can simply double click on it. Type in 0720, you hit the tab button, it will automatically understand it's 2011. Try to get used to entering the year, because otherwise when you will be up to 2012 in January, you would want to enter a bill from December. You will have to remember to enter the year, otherwise it will show December 1st, 2012. But you will also get reminded, let's say, I'm going to post date this for the next 3 months, for September. When I save it, the system will flag me saying that this is too far. If I click on Pay Selected Bills, there's actually more than 30 days in the future. Are you sure you want to make this change? You click yes, well, we'll let you go through. If you click no, you have the option to change it. And this is very often happening if you don't enter the year as a new year. Click yes. Now you have the option to print checks. If you want to print checks, you have 2 checks now that should be printed. You can also use the print check screen. But this is only if you select that you're planning to print the check instead of a signed check number. What check do you want to print? First of all, what check number do you want to start? You're going to put in a printer physical checks. They have to be either pre-printed, special design for Quickbooks, or if you use a program like VersaCheck or Checkman, then you need to have blank but special paper. Then you click OK. Let's say you only want to print the first one or only the second one. What's the first check number? Let's say it's going to be 101. You click OK. This is the 3 types of checks that you could use. Either voucher, check on top, 2 stubs. One is to send for the vendor, the other one to keep. Or standard, which is 3 checks, no stubs. Or wallet checks, a check and a stub, and 3 checks with stubs on 1 page. If you select standard, here this is very simple. There's 1 check per page. If you select standard, now you need to tell the system how many checks do you have on the first page. And this is specifically designed if you print more than 1 check at the same time. If you print just 1 check, it doesn't matter. It will take it wherever you enter your feed into the printer. If you print more than 1 check, let's say you print 2 checks, and you only have the bottom, the first 2 were already ripped off. Then you will have to tell the system that the first page only contains 1 check. This way, the system will know to print 1 check on the first page and the remaining on the second page, and so on. The same concept is if you use wallet checks. You want to make sure that you update how many checks you still have on the page, on the first page. A lot of companies use voucher check, and then you could print a check you can't preview, just have to print it. And this is basically, once you select to print, the next screen will ask you, did the print come out correctly? I would recommend to wait, especially if you have a lot of checks, wait until everything comes out correctly. Otherwise, if you have to reprint them, you will have to mark all the checks again on the register to be printed. If you wait to click OK until it's finished, then you have a window. I don't have a printer here, so I can't really print. Then you have a window, an option to select. I want to reprint. On the left side, place a check mark, I want to reprint whatever check you want to reprint for whatever reason. It's jammed or whatever. And then it will not save that the check number, that this check was used as this check number, only it will flag it back to be printed. Question, how does the system know which check is on the page if there is only one check left? Well, it always takes the top one. If you have 3, then you will have 1, 2, 3. If you have 2, then you will have the second one and the third. If you have 1, then it will only be the last one. This is the way the system is designed. So if you type in here 1, if you print 2 checks, then of course you need to put in the last check, also another page for the second check to be on the next page. Any other questions? Let's say on my email address is mayor@fmbbusiness.com. If you have, sometimes you go to pay selected bills. Well, right now there is no open bills to select. You can't use the screen only if bills are entered in the system and it's still not paid. Sometimes this is only if you use to be printed. If you use a signed check number, then the next screen after pay selected bills will ask you, will ask you to enter the check number. Even though you selected to be printed, and then you decided, I don't have any more checks, so I'm going to write the checks. Or, I'd rather pay the bill online. You will have to go back to your check register. How do you get to your check register? 3 ways. Either click on the check register here. Since you don't have only one account, he won't ask you to select an account. It will get you straight onto the check register. Here, since we didn't print the checks, we didn't finalize it, it's still flagged to print. You will have to enter the check number, how it was paid, or if it was paid online, either delete the word to print and leave it blank, or type in online. If you want to save the changes, yes. So then, if you issue post-dated checks, head checks, then you will see a blue line across your check register. This indicates that the balance as of today is the last balance right above the blue line. Anything after the blue line is post-dated. The same thing applies to deposits. Most of the time, deposits you won't have post-dated. It's either it's deposited or it's not deposited. This is one way to remind you when you're supposed to pay your bills. Another reminder is if you use the reminders and alerts from Quickbooks. Very limited, but it might be helpful. You click on View Reminders, and this is a list what could be reminded. Of course, we don't have any open bills. That's why on the reminders it won't show. 2 things should be set up the first time you start using or any time. First of all, you click on Edit, Preference, and you click on Reminders. This is the place where all the preference and all the setups are from Quickbooks. Now, number 1, if you want to use the reminder, make sure when you click on Edit Preference, Reminders, under My Preference, you should have Show Reminder List when opening a company file. Every morning when you come in at work, you open a computer, you open Quickbooks, the reminder screen will pop up. Now, also, but this is every user could set their own. I want it, another user doesn't want it, so they could decide if they want it or not. The company preference, this is company-wide. So it's not based on users. I want to see a certain reminder, another user wants to see a different reminder. You can't do that. You can't customize it according to the users. There's 3 types of reminders. First of all, you can see each reminder separately. Do you want to see the summary, or you want to see the details list, or not at all? Then also, if it's one of the 2, either summary or list, how far in advance do you want to see it? Let's say I'm supposed to print checks. Do you want to see it a couple of days? How many days? Only a few days, or 0, just the day I'm supposed to print it? The same thing is invoices to print. Overdue invoices, if you want a reminder, just say, okay, I'm supposed to call all these people. Almost due invoices is a couple of days before. And then you have everything else. One of the reminders is bills to pay. You want to see a list of it? How many days before? 10 days or a few days before? And you can set your own set of days. When do you want it? This is, if you want, just in general, to-do notes. Basically, a to-do list. Where do you get this? There are notes individually by customers and vendors, and there are also general notes. Click OK when you're done setting this up. Now you can see your reminders, but of course there's no other reminders. If it would be an outstanding bill to be paid, it will show up on here as a group and then itemized by list. To get the to-do list, you click on the company menu, and you click on to-do list. And here you will add your own to-do list. But this is company-wide. Click on New, type in the note, remind me on when. This is, let's say I want run and open, or run statements. Okay, you want, every end of the month, you want to make sure you run your statements for all your customers that owe you money. You click OK, and then you click on your reminders. Now you have a list that tells you exactly when you need to do what. Now, there's no snooze button on this. If you want, okay, right now it's done already. I want this to be postponed for the next month. You will have to double click on this and change the date to be in next month. There's a shortcut. If you want it to be at the end of next month, type the letter H for the last letter of the month. And this is on the list of the keyboard shortcuts. If I want it to be the beginning of this month, letter N for month. Beginning of the week is letter W. The end of the week is letter K. Beginning of the year is letter Y. The end of the week is the end of the year is letter R. It's always the beginning of the letter or the end. Beginning of the word or the end of the word. And then you can say, I want it to be reminded again at the end of next month. Now when you click OK, it will disappear since it's not something that should be reminded. It's not due. Remember, you only set that it should remind you 10 days before. So on July 21st, it will start reminding you to run your statements. Any questions so far? Okay, this is basically what QuickBooks Beginners is. Do you have any questions? short questions, you can always contact me. My email address is mayor@fmdbusiness.com. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Good luck to all.